Hello, and welcome to another instalment of History Hacks, greeting you for a glorious day of quarantine in Poland. Tell me, Alex, who do we have on today?
So we're going to relieve the Sunday boredom a bit because we have the fabulous Dan Jones with us today, talking medieval history. It's the first time we've had medieval history on, which is awesome. Dan, how are you doing?
How am I doing?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm fine. I love house. I've been waiting all my life. Like I thought this would happen because I'd committed like a minor, well, like a mid-grade crime where I didn't necessarily even go to open prison, but had an ankle tag. And I thought that would be what caused house arrest, but it turns out it's just a massive willingness to be incarcerated by the government that got to me first.
And also, as well, you're the first person we've spoken to. Aren't you dealing with the whole homeschooling thing?
Oh, I mean, it's amazing. So my kids like this is the last week of school before the Easter holiday. So they're due to break up on Friday. We're now talking on Wednesday. Uh, if sorry, if that blowing
No, no,
your cover. No,
no, we're
good.
good.
So it's now Wednesday, and this is the last week of term, and the school, I think, quite sensibly, or at least I thought quite sensibly, said the school building is closed, but school is still open. So they're sending a full like day's work for each child each day, and it goes up. It's uploaded in the morning, and like you look at it and go, oh shit, like this is this is like six lessons, and I've got two children. I mean, that you can do the math. So I'm teaching year three and year six from 8:50 in the morning until 3:30 in the afternoon. I've just done 3 days of it, and honestly, I think it's the three most honest days, like hard days work I've ever done.
It sounds like
Like,
I would be pretty sure that they wouldn't expect that much of you and that you could like fling a textbook at your kid and as long as they kind of did some reading, then that would be adequate. But it seems like they've pretty much just made you their official teacher.
um, I mean, there's a little bit of they've made me, and a little bit of I'm definitely up for it. I mean, so to put it into context, I am wearing my undergraduate gown during all lessons, like Mr. Crouch from the Billy Bunter stories. I'm not even joking. I've told a bunch of people this, and they all like, haha. And then they see the photo, and they're like, "Wait, you're actually doing that?" Yeah, damn right, I'm doing it. And then I put it on the beginning of the lesson. I take it off afterwards. We're working in the kitchen, but it adds an element of formality and scholarship, I think, to the interaction. So, yeah, that's where I'm at the moment. 2 more days of it, and then they've got nearly a month off for Easter, so I'm free to ignore them again as usual.
Oh, that well, let's get you away from primary schooling for a while, because we've had people sending us in questions for you. The first one's really good. Someone, Sammy, has sent in basically wants you to do like a mini award ceremony for medieval women. So, if you could announce your winners. First of all, Sammy wants to know who's the most interesting medieval woman you found.
The one I'm really into at the moment, um, as long dead women go, is there's a character. So the book I've got was just coming out in paperback that came out last autumn. Was called Crusaders. It's all about the Crusades, as the name suggests, or rather the people who took part in the Crusades. And my favourite character from that. Apologies to anyone who came to any of the shows in the autumn, but so they know this already. But my favourite character is Margaret of Beverley, who was a Yorkshire lass who went to Jerusalem at the wrong time and got caught up in Jerusalem when Saladin's Ayyubid army was outside. And she was fighting Saladin's army from the walls of Jerusalem with a slingshot, throwing rocks, wearing a saucepan on her head as a helmet. And then she was, long story short, she survived the siege of Jerusalem in 1187, was subsequently enslaved for about 18 months, 15 months in the Kingdom of Jerusalem, survived that, wandered around the Kingdom of Jerusalem during the Third Crusade when Richard the Lionheart was about, survived all that, and then made it back to Europe. And she's a real like swashbuckling story that was later written up to make her sound, as a sort of hagiography, to make her sound saintly. But it's just a brilliant story, and she's great because she's just so counter intuitive. When you think of the Crusades, you think it's a bit sort of, it's just sort of dick waving, really.
Mm.
And sorry to write off an entire some discipline of medieval studies. Just dick waving, really. It's a little bit more than that, but it's definitely generally considered very macho. So to find a woman involved who's not only just sort of there, kind of swooning while all the men did the fighting, but actually right in the thick of it, that was great, and I've really enjoyed sort of working with her life story, and that's fantastic. So Joan of Arc, for those two reasons, is probably my favourite.
I'm scarred by her permanently. I do, you know, when you do that Camp America thing, Joan of Arc has, like, I have nightmares about her because I did that Camp America thing and I got put at this remote little nutty camp named after her in the Adirondacks, and we would have to like plug the story of Joan of Arc every day as a bedtime story, except we had to rewrite the end, and at the end it was something mad, like she was supposed to have survived and lived happily ever after in the Adirondacks, but she didn't end up getting burnt anyway. So I literally had 12 weeks of just being bludgeoned with Joan of Arc, but it was quite surreal, but I still reckon she's a good choice.
That's mental.
I know.
What are we doing?
I just now I realise I was being paid 2 cents an hour to look after rich people's children, and I was being exploited, and I was basically being held hostage in the Adirondacks. But at the time, it seemed like a good idea because they gave you quite a big visa on the end of it.
Yeah, fair enough. What's the next question?
Yeah, your least favourite one.
My least favourite woman.
Yeah.
Medieval woman.
Medieval, reminding you, not us.
It feels harsh to do this, doesn't it? Who's my least favourite medieval woman? I don't know. Let's do another one, and I'll come back to that. I find it very uncharitable to say they don't do this at the Oscars, do they? They don't say,
no.
Right, best actor goes to Joaquin Phoenix. Like shittest, most sort of annoying actor goes to Jake Gyllenhaal.
I'd probably watch it though if they did do that category.
Oh no, well, I like Jake.
But yeah, but what they did used to do separately was the Razzies, wasn't it?
Do they? Is it too non-woke to do that now?
I just think it's fucking mean.
It is. It is pretty mean. Let's move on from that one. If you think of someone you hate at any point in this interview, we'll go back to it.
Yeah.
But category 4.
And they have to be a medieval woman.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It then narrows it a bit.
Venn diagrams of people I'm interested in who lived in the Middle Ages and are women, and people I hate, and they're both very full, but they don't weirdly intersect that much. Anyway, was Piers Morgan a medieval woman?
Yes. For this purposes, well, it's pretty old.
Okay, let's not get into him.
Let's go with Sammy's last category. I like the best, actually. He said, your favourite medieval woman, underrated or given a bad press, and why?
Underrated or given a bad press, and why? Well, I'll tell you who's given a bad press. Is old Margaret Beaufort, Henry VII's mother. Because, as I'm sure you're aware, the one subject in the Middle Ages that people are generally most interested in, is the story of Richard III, Prince in the Tower.
Mm-hmm.
And, you get the sort of people who are sensibly interested in this as a historical topic of inquiry, and then you get the sort of raving mad people for whom this is their life's consuming passion. And there's a subset of those people who are, pro Richard, because it's there are tribes and squads and teams. They're pro Richard, and they'll go, "It was all Margaret Beaufort. She killed the Prince in the Tower. It's obvious." And you go, and when you drill down into the evidence for why they believe it, it's a Philippa Gregory novel.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, that's it. That is why they. And I think it's fair. It's unfair. It's unfair on Margaret Beaufort, because, I mean, what we know of her life, she was sort of really quite impressive, and from being a sort of 13-year-old mother through to the kind of matriarch and don of the early Tudors. And I think so. She's unfairly maligned. But even as I'm saying this, my heart is sinking, because I made a vow to myself quite a few years ago to stop talking about this stuff, because it just made, like, there's gangs of people who hate me just for saying stuff
own
like
it.
this.
Is it probably includes that mad woman who tried to crawl on the table with the bones when they did the Richard III documentary? The main thing I remember is that she was trying to cover the box in the Royal Standard when they dug it up, and someone was just not having it because there was no evidence, there was no historical evidence that they had dug anyone important up.
You know, Steve Coogan is making a movie about that.
I have a feeling that might be quite entertaining.
Yes, I have a feeling it might be as well, but probably not in the way that you think. It's yes, Steve Coogan and Jeff Pope have written it. Sorry, I'm just saying because I'm not sure.
No, is he going for the whole is he approaching it quite sensibly, or are they actually just having a riot about the whole concept?
I just think it's interesting that went from a. That was an amazing document. I mean, so there was an amazing thing, full stop.
It was.
And between Richard III's remains being found, tested, and certified and Game of Thrones becoming a sort of worldwide phenomenon. I mean, those two things, which kind of happened around the same time. It was like 2013, wasn't it? 2013-14, the Richard III stuff was going on. Yeah. And that was like, by that time, you were into season 2, 3, 4 of Game of Thrones. And it just started to break out of like the nerd sphere into the stratosphere. And the two things did like unbelievable wonders for medieval history in the sort of popular mindset. And in a sense, I'm loath to have a go at anything to do with Richard III's bones being found, because ultimately I may owe a section, if not a large section, if not all my career to it. So I'm not,
It's one of those things, isn't it, where you think, you look at it and you think, oh my God, oh dear God, as a historian, but also it's bringing history and medieval history to people who usually wouldn't even bother with it. So it's expanding the field, and it's making.
And I'm really not any more snobby at all about what people are interested in. I just think like it's a hard sell, full stop. And if people are interested, when the BBC History magazine do their Hot 100 Dead People Awards every year, and it's always Richard III, Elizabeth I, Anne Boleyn, Eleanor of Aquitaine, Jesus, Hitler, Jimmy Savile, or whatever.
Yeah, and probably David Beckham for some godforsaken.
Well, no, I don't think. Anyway, I think, years ago, oh God, why can't people just be more interested in Margaret of Beverley, for God's sake? It's fine. There are things people are interested in. That market, and let's not be too snobby about it, and let's not try to complain that why can't I just be interested in the one thing I've been interested in all my life. It doesn't necessarily work that way around.
Yeah, I think Alina has been dying to ask you a question which would fit in quite nicely here.
Well, ask.
Yeah, so I've never had the chance to ask, because I've come to like loads of your talks and Chalk Valley and whatever in the past. Also because my friends are like massive fans, by the way, just so you know. I want to know actually.
You're always with a massive fan friend every time I see you.
Oh God, I know, and I'm going to make sure she listens to this so she hears you saying that.
Not
Poor girl. No, it's a good thing. It's a really good. She teaches me some stuff about medieval history. So and so do you actually. But I actually want to know, why did you choose medieval history over like the hundreds of other possibilities?
Well, it's a story that I don't know if it reflects very well on me, but this is it. I was 17, and I'd just finished school, and I'd done my A-levels, and I'd been offered a place to read history at Cambridge, and they send you a form just towards the end of your upper sixth year from the college, Pembroke College, my college in Cambridge, send you a form saying, dear person coming up to be an undergraduate and read part 1 of Tripos, what do you want to study? Because I don't know if it's still true now, but part one of Tripos, you could choose anything, so long as you did a paper that was political and economic, a paper that was social and cultural, a paper that was before 1750, and a paper that was after 1750. Well, you could satisfy all that in 2 papers. So out of 5. So they said, what do you want to choose? You've got the whole of the history faculty to choose from. We'll find you a supervisor. Anyway, so I went to in school, all I'd study was Tudors and Nazis. I know, that's like a cliche now, but it's true. I've just done Tudors and Nazis over and over and over again. So I went to Mr. Green, my history teacher, and I said, Mr. Green, look, all I've done is Tudors and Nazis, and they want me to choose what I should study. What shall I put on this form? And I was, listen, I'm 17, it was the summer, and I was quite eager to get down the park with my mates and drink lager out of tins, a feeling I'm getting every day now, right now. And so I said, Mr. Green, what should I put on the form? What should I study? And he went, I don't know. What about medieval? Well, that'll do. So I just ticked the medieval box and sent it back to college. And that was that. And so I got to Pembroke in this is October 1999. John Parry, who's my director of studies, said, oh, right, so you want to study medieval history? I was like, oh, yeah, no, I really do. So he said, right, I've got your supervisor. So he sent me to Helen Castor, who's at Sydney Sussex College then.
Oh,
and she was brilliant. And from that, I was so total chance. And then, of course, I stuck with it because I had brilliant teachers, Helen Castor, Christine Carpenter, Richard Partington. There was a brilliant medieval faculty, medieval little sort of group within the history faculty at Cambridge at that time. And I just kind of dug it, and stuck with it.
We are hoping to get Helen Castor on here actually. We're somewhere in a couple of weeks' time. We're hoping to interview her. But I'm always stunned by like the breadth of the stuff you've covered, because to just go medieval. I mean, you're covering like not only like Tudor stuff, but all the way back through Plantagenets and stuff, and you're doing Wars of the Roses. Like anyone else would maybe do they would focus on one of those. So it's always impressed me that you've done so much across the whole span. But what have you got a favourite part?
No, I mean, my favourite part really is the sort of venturing into new territory, and it's as I've gone on. I mean, there's a point when I'd written, the Peasants' Revolt book, Plantagenets, Wars of the Roses, and there's a little book about Magna Carta, where I could have gone, well, now I'll just knock off a load of biographies of every medieval king, effectively, and stuck, within that lane. And that would have been fine. I'd have been bored. I get my satisfaction. I think I'm best at taking on big subjects and making sense of them for sort of lay readership.
Yeah, that's something I really admire you for, actually, the fact that you can do that. I mean, my favourite's Hollow Crown, because I keep banging on about it to anyone who'll listen, because you didn't do Tudors and you didn't do Wars of the Roses, but you showed people how the two link together, and it's genius. And I can't believe no one thought of it before. But that's my personal favourite.
I quite enjoy your sorry.
Go on.
Oh no, I was going to say I've just started watching your Castles programme because it's come up on the Polish Netflix.
Yeah.
So I've spent literally the past 2 hours binge watching you on TV.
You're starting to creep him out now, Alina. First of all, you're stalking him on Chalk Valley, and now you're like binge watching him on Netflix.
Well, no, because I wanted to prepare myself for something interesting to actually contribute into the conversation. Because obviously I'm in 20th century post World War One stuff, and it's actually really interesting. There's some really great, I mean, you cover so much history from it's incredible, like 1,000 years of history. It's amazing.
We are complete fangirls. Sorry.
No, it's really kind of you, and I genuinely appreciate it. I find it difficult to take compliments. Not difficult to take money, but difficult to take compliments. But thank you. Look, I just worked out, I've been doing this for quite a while now, and I've worked out what I'm good at, and what I'm good at is telling big narrative, and that focuses on immediacy, on breadth, on the kind of epic. I would do very bad. I don't have a PhD. I don't think I'd have enjoyed doing a PhD. I don't dig, the granular. I I like big stuff, big
Yeah.
ideas, big thought, fun, hyperbole. You know, that these are currencies I trade in.
I think what
And
the important thing for Alina and I is your stuff is complete escapism from us. So I'm World War One, too, World War One. The only thing I'm good at is making people cry. And same with her, she does Holocaust studies. So when we get stuck into your books, it's not something we're ever going to study or research ourselves. We can just fully enjoy it, basically.
well, I'm glad you do. But I think there's something to be said for, you know, in generations past, historians didn't obsess with this kind of stay in your lane mentality, and that there was something about, you know, having the toolbox of being a historian, and then you could rove around and you could go and attack. You know, think of Barbara Tuchman or Tuchman. I still don't know how to say her name. You know, writing those two amazing books, Guns of August,
Love it.
and A Distant Mirror, right?
Mm.
First World War in the 14th century. And of course, you know, what she emphasizes, certainly in A Distant Mirror, is the sort of latent similarities between a catastrophic 14th century and a catastrophic 20th century. But, you know, she had or didn't see anything strange in saying, I'm an intelligent, trained historian. I'm going to go and look at the 14th century. I'm an intelligent, trained historian. I'm going to look at the 20th century. That did not strike her as odd or heretical or blasphemous or whatever. And why should it? You know, there is something that you can bring to a period by having a fresh pair of eyes. I mean, I'm writing a new book at the moment, which starts in 410. And so I've just had to kind of cram on ancient Rome. Now, you're talking to Mary Beard, or maybe have spoken to Mary Beard.
Tomorrow morning, but yeah.
Right. Say hello to her. I love Mary. She's absolutely fantastic.
I'm so
I interviewed
excited.
her in Jaipur at the literary festival, January before the one just gone. She's amazing. She's amazing. She's one of my historical heroes, and so down to earth and so brilliant and so academic, but also so engaging to a popular audience as well. She's fantastic. Anyway, she spent her entire career on Rome, right? And I spent about 6 months doing the background for this new book. So I'm never going to be an expert on ancient Rome, but I think if I come to it from the perspective of a medievalist, then I'll be able to have the right kind of context to know what I'm looking for to begin a big story about the Middle Ages in ancient Rome. And that doesn't sort of terrify me. I'm not plagued by kind of silent hours of worrying about my own charlatanism in the middle of the night. I leave that to other people. Do you know what I mean?
I think just quickly on Barbara Tuchman or Tuchman, you know how she's so good is the fact that she wrote that anyone else who wrote a World War One book, when she wrote Guns of August, the book looks ridiculous now. After further scholarship, hers doesn't to me. But we were actually going to hit you with a question about what you were working on next at the end of the show, but give it to us now then. So it starts in 410.
Yeah, it's a book called Powers and Thrones, and it's you could call it the Middle Ages. It's a big sweeping survey of the Middle Ages, the Western Middle Ages, right? And it begins in 410 with the collapse of the Western Roman Empire, and and the sack of Rome in 410. And it goes through to another sack of Rome in 1527, and it really proceeds by saying what were the big. Well, my initial thought was what were the big powers that controlled and built the West in the Middle Ages? And Powers and Thrones had a nice cadence and ring to it. But as I'm working on it, the thrones, it's going to be arranged. Each chapter will be the first one's, Rome. The second one is barbarian migrations. The third one is Byzantium. The fourth one is the first Islamic Caliphate. The fifth one is the Franks. You see what I mean? It's the big building block of Western history in the Middle Ages.
It sounds fabulous.
The powers, well, it's going to be good because the powers, and I think it's going to be it is a distant mirror type book in the sense that the powers really now are not, as I work on it, the Franks and the Romans and the Vikings or whatever. They're the thrones. The powers are I'm trying to investigate how things we're obsessed with now shape the medieval world. And the five sort of touch points are climate change, technological change, mass migration, global networks, and pandemic disease. Now, when I put those together, I thought pandemic disease is the weak link. As it turns out, it's not. Weirdly. Anyway, so it's sort of seeing the Middle Ages, instead of as a sort of religious and military narrative that just says, and then another king got pissed off with his neighbor, or, you know, decided to have a slightly variant form of Christianity / Islam, and so it killed a bunch of people on horseback. It says, okay, how did, let's say in the barbarian migrations, how did a sort of super drought on the eastern steppe bring about the fall of the Western Roman Empire? And the link, of course, is the Huns migrating and moving the Goths and the Alans and the Vandals and so on.
That's so smart. Sorry, I was just going to say that, like, it would be so easy, wouldn't it, given a span like that, to sort of go through, like, take the easy way out, I would assume, and do like through various monarchs and kings and different reigns and stuff. But to actually tackle the stuff like the migrations and the pandemics and stuff, it's just, I think it sounds brilliant.
Well, the trick is to do the two, you see, and the trick is always triangulation. You know, great political insight of the sort of Blair Clinton year. You triangulate, or as Jay-Z used to put it, you got to feed him sugar, right? You can't like, you can't just drop a load of, like, I can't go from writing sort of Haru Hurrah Plantagenet's Crusades books to, right guys, now there's a whole book full of tree ring data and stuff about sort of viral pandemic. Now, it's still got to have the sort of framework of epic storytelling, but it's you know, we're talking about kind of limiting factors on the storytelling and focal points within your research, which says, I'm just going to show you how the things that animate us animated the world then. But there'll still be people getting their heads chopped off and like funny stories about you know, people who had weird pets and sent giraffes to each other. Like, you know, you have to do both, and that's the tricky balance in the book, is to make it kind of rip along whilst also having a kind of beating, serious heart to it. And a lot of that comes in the architectural work you do at the beginning of the book, which is, you know, I could bore you for an hour or so about that. You know, if you want to talk about story architecture, I'll just say one thing. And you mentioned the Hollow Crown. And that was that is still my favourite book that I wrote. I think because it was with that book that I kind of really started to get a handle on how you have to build story to make a successful popular history book. Because the Wars of the Roses and the Rise of the Tudors is a fiendishly difficult topic, and you know, there are vanishingly few books that do anything but descend into a sort of morass of different earls of, you know, such and such and dukes of who knows where, and become essentially genealogy. And it was like, okay, how do we arrange this story? What is the sort of superstructure that's holding this story together, that's going to make it feel like it works? And I drew a lot for that book, particularly on television storytelling architecture, and still do. I think that, you know, the shape, the tropes, the narrative structures of screen storytelling are so powerful, and they're so ingrained in the way that people understand story, that if you want people to actually read and respond to history books who aren't, you know, historians, who are people, you know, a lot of my readers come out of historical fiction. I want to attract people who wouldn't normally read a history book, because there are loads of them out there. You have to meet the reader somewhere in the middle, and you've got to accept that most people consume most of their stories these days through television.
I mean, now you're saying that, actually, I will say that you can completely see the evolution in your writing in between, because I've read the Plantagenets one after I read the Hollow Crown, and you could see that in sort of your evolution, that it was a step backwards, if you like, not in a bad way, but that you had really like completely raised the bar with the Hollow Crown. But we've been fangirling for way too long, and it's really selfish, because other people have
carry on. Let's do some more of it.
We've been sent questions by more people on Twitter. I really like this one. This came in from James Powell, who said, we seem to go over the same stories a lot. What's the most most best, so what's the best, or most important untold story of the period between Hastings and Bosworth?
I mean, it's very hard to say what's the most important. I can only say here's the book I would love to write at some point, which is about the famous Mayor of London, Dick Whittington.
Is he real?
Famous because, no, very real. Famous because he most often now turns up in pantomimes, right, with his cat and probably a lot of sort of
and breasts kind of usually, right?
Yeah, sexual innuendo and kind of whoopee cushion noises and so on. And it's sad, really, because Whittington was, a genuinely great man. A sort of fairly obscure origins from the Cotswolds, pitched up in London, apprenticed, to the sort of mercer trade, so dealing in cloth, and over the, survived 5 kings' reigns. Running, let me get this right. So, Edward III, Richard II, Henry IV, Henry V, Henry VI. He died in 1423. So he lived and worked through 5 kings' reigns, unaffected largely by the regime changes across 1399 and the turbulence before and afterwards. And that's the deposition of Richard II. Made a fantastic amount of money. I mean, so wealthy, it was unbelievable, but kept it all in cash rather than land. Didn't have any kids. So when he died in 1423, left his vast fortune to good works in the city of London. Almshouses, sewers, public toilets, refuges for women who'd fallen on hard times, like good shit. And made so much money, in fact, that there are still people living today, or in Crawley now rather than London, because there was the Mercer Company did a property swap a few decades ago. There are still people living today in Dick Whittington houses, subsidised public housing that owes its foundation and its continuing operation to Dick Whittington, the mayor, Richard Whittington, Mayor of London 4 times in the 14th, 15th century. So I think his personal story is amazing and unknown in general. And I think also that a view into the sort of the big bang of the city during the Middle Ages, if you like, forget the 1990s, the big bang of London in the High Middle Ages into this sort of globally connected mercantile powerhouse is a super interesting story. And I'd love to write it one day. But there's loads of things I'd like to write one day.
I'm actually really excited because I can add something right now.
Oh, go for it, yeah. I want to hear
basically, long story cut short, so I teach English out here in Poland. Yeah. And there's this great little program that shows snippets of history for kids. And funnily enough, they did one on Dick Whittington. So I got to teach my class about Dick Whittington and like this basic history about him, which is quite exciting, actually.
That's awesome.
That sounds like a great story.
I thought I'd add that in. So,
well, I'm glad you did.
Do you know what? I'll send you guys the link, or I'll post it on Twitter so people can see if they're interested. But we've got another question from Brady. He asks, I'm curious about his thoughts, so your thoughts obviously, on the legacy of, I'm going to say this completely wrong, please don't judge me, Simon de Montfort?
Simon de Montfort, yeah.
You're so not allowed to laugh at my Polish pronunciation ever again.
Yeah, I know. I'm really sorry. It's just so embarrassing. This is so embarrassing. It's okay. I'm going to keep going. So, your thoughts about the legacy of this dude. How do we reconcile his role in strengthening Parliament and increasing representation of... Do you know what? She just stopped me reading because I don't even know what half these words are. Burgesses.
Yeah.
With his well-documented persecution of Jews and anti-Semitic acts.
Yeah, I hear you. But I just don't think that reconciling them is a worthwhile pastime, and it's not particularly historical, is it? I mean, you can. Sophie Ambler's book about Simon de Montfort is brilliant for anyone who's interested in the topic, and she's got him perfectly, I think. called The Song of Simon de Montfort. Came out last year or year before. Last year, I think. And but I think the answer is you just, there is no need to reconcile. You just have to see that here is somebody who was instrumental in some ways in the development of Parliament and, in a limited sense, parliamentary democracy. And he was someone who was also a product of his fairly beastly, by our standards, times, which were rampantly anti-Semitic. I mean, it's just who he was. And I don't think that you need to reconcile, unless you're sort of addicted to putting people into boxes that say either hero or villain. But if you are, then that's, it's going to make history quite difficult.
Let's move on to, this is my mum again. My mum absolutely screwed me with one of her questions, but her one for you is nice. So she says her favourite book is The Hollow Crown. Which one did you have the most fun writing, which you've kind of answered, but she wants to know who's the best villain you've come across. Best, I suppose, and most entertaining, I think she means.
The best villain? Gosh, that's quite a good one. I mean, there was a lot in Crusaders that I really enjoyed. Actually, no, I tell you, the best villain, in a way, is Philip IV, who's the sort of ultimate villain of the Templar story. Responsible ultimately for the downfall of the Templars in 1307 through 1312. Because he's straight out of villain central casting, sort of handsome, psychopathic, completely unreasonable, just the most grim and dedicatedly, if that's a word, nasty piece of work that you'll ever come across, who repeatedly and without compunction, fucks numerous groups within his kingdom as hard as he possibly can, starting with the church, running through the Jews, and ending up with the Templars, and taking a detour along the way to a couple of his sons-in-law, who he rightly or wrongly suspects of having affairs. He is a totally brutal, beastly character, absolutely made for the screen. So I think I'd go with Philip IV, Philip the Fair, Philip the Bell, King of France.
Sounds like a reasonable answer.
So got a question from Bradley Baker. Any more books on the monarchy in the queue?
Any more books on the monarchy in the queue? Well, Powers and Thrones is the next book. Actually, no, the next book is, I've got another book with Marina Amaral, my collaborator from Brazil. She's great. And so we've got a book called The World of Flame, where I'm treading into your territory, First and Second World War. That's coming out in early May, assuming the publishing industry hasn't collapsed by then. Then I've got Powers and Thrones. Then I'm writing 3 novels. And I've got a couple of TV scripted things I'm developing as well, which are slow burn, like all of it. So I've got a lot on my plate until 2024, really. 23 maybe. There is a gap between Plantagenets and Wars of the Roses. There's a deliberate gap, which is Henry V shaped. Because Plantagenets finishes in 1399 and Hollow Crown starts with Henry V's marriage. But effectively it starts with Henry V's death in the early 1420s. And so there is a deliberate gap between those 2 books that I may one day fill with something on Henry V. But that's now quite a long way down the line, I'm afraid.
So you're working on loads. Crusaders, if people want a Dan Jones fix now, Crusaders is the latest sort of, as you did, like, epic that you've written. Again, I don't know how you got all 4 into one book and made it flow like that. Tell us a bit about Crusaders and why people should go and buy it.
Well, Crusaders is there's been endless books about the Crusades, but this one tells the story through the eyes of people who were involved. It's highly focused, personal stories, mixing up the characters I've cast in it from, it's not just, white guys with swords. It's not just Richard the Lionheart. This is Latin Christians, Greek Christians, Syrian Christians, Armenians, Jewish people, Sunni and Shia Muslims, Turks, Kurds, Arabs, a Bedouin, the whole gamut, and it crossed dozens of time zones, if you like. You go from the Mongols in the east to the Irish in the west. It's this sort of overflowing kind of pool of mad, bad, and dangerous to know people. And it was a riot to write. I wrote very far. I wrote the text in 8 months, and it was just so intense and so much fun. And I think that sort of that fizzing kind of joy in the storytelling. Like I'm starting to get a sort of handle on the book now. It's out in paperback. You start to sort of be able to take a reasonable view of whether it was a success or a miserable failure. And I just really like it. It's I felt like I was sort of in a real groove with telling this story about the Crusades in a totally different way. And I think it hangs together. I think it works. They're fun stories. I had fun writing them, and I still have fun reading them. So I hope people will go and buy it, except they can't go and buy it because the world's shut.
Yeah, and even like Amazon Prime now constitutes, we may get to you in the next 2.5 weeks, even though we're still taking your money.
Yeah, like slightly fuck them. I think order it from Waterstones or your local indie.
Yeah, support your local bookstore, because otherwise
Or it's
there
in
won't be a
Tesco.
local bookstore.
I believe if you're panic buying in Tesco, I think it might be going to Tesco. So ideally, if you go in a panic buy, just sweep them all off the shelf, like elbow an old person out of the way. Tell everyone you're going to breathe on them because you want every copy of Crusaders in the shop.
So as someone who works in PR, how badly do you want to up your sale count? Because you could feasibly link the lack of toilet paper with the paperback edition, as long as they then go and buy a lovely hardback edition to keep on their shelf, obviously, in respect and love.
Any format they want to buy it.
Awesome.
Wipe whatever orifice they like with it.
No, I can't wait to read it. I've actually got it. It's on a pile along with everything else I wish I could read that wasn't about Edward VIII.
Well, one day when you've got time on your hands, right?
Yeah. Thank you very much for coming on and talking to us. It's been epic. This has been Dan Jones, Britain's edgiest historian, which we kind of decide that it's quite a low bar, and it might be because you say fuck and wore a leather jacket once.
Could be. I mean, I do know some other historians who've done that. It's just maybe they haven't been recorded doing it. And as history shows us, that's the only way to be remembered.
Anyway, edgy or not, you are fantastic. Your books are great. Can't wait to read the next one that comes out and to get to Crusaders on my path. Thanks very much, Dan.
Say hi to Mary Beard.
No, we will. Bye-bye. Okay, so tomorrow we are going to kick off week 2 in style. We brought you some World War II in Europe last week, and we're going to take you to the Pacific tomorrow with the absolutely lovely Saul David, who is just releasing a fantastic new book called Crucible of Hell, which is about Okinawa and the last great battle of the Second World War. So tune in tomorrow for that. Until then, stay safe. Of course, absolutely, when you can, stay indoors. And this is Nighthawk signing off.